trained dog with her master's hand on her shoulder. Gabriel turned nearly black eyes on Matt. The man had a forceful gaze and a look of knowing. What can you tell us of this boy? Nothing, my lord. Matt cleared his throat. The man's stare was worse than the omelets. I went to Tarvalon to see my sister. She's a novice, Els Grimwell. I'm Tom Grimwell, my lord. The Lady Elaine learned I was meaning to see Camelin on my way back home. I'm from Comfrey, my lord, a little village north of Verlon. I'd never seen any place bigger than Verlon before I went to Tarvalon. And she, the Lady Elaine, I mean, gave me that letter to bring. He caught my gaze and glanced at him when he said he came from north of Verlon. But he knew there was a village called Comfrey there. He remembered hearing it mentioned. Gabriel nodded, but he said, Do you know where Elaine was going, boy? Or on what business? Speak the truth, and you have nothing to fear. Lie, and you will be put to the question. Matt did not have to pretend a worried frown. My lord, I only saw the daughter heir the once. She gave me the letter and a gold mark, and told me to bring it to the queen. I know no more of what is in it than I've heard here. Gabriel appeared to consider it, with no sign on that dark face of whether he believed a word or not. No, Gabriel, Morgay said suddenly. Too many have been put to
Hey, Fire, how you doing?
I can see the need, as you have shown it to me, but not for this. Not a boy who only brought a letter whose contents he does not know. As my queen commands, so shall it be, the dark man said. The tone was respectful, but he touched her cheek in a way that made color come to her face, and her lips part as if she expected a kiss. Morgay drew an unsteady breath. Tell me,
I just gotta roll one more up.
Did my daughter look well when you saw her? Yes, my queen. She smiled and laughed and showed a saucy tongue. I mean, Morgay laughed softly at the look on his face. Do not be afraid. Elaine does have a saucy tongue, far too often for her own good. I am happy she is well. Those blue eyes studied him deeply. A young man who has left his small village often finds it difficult to return to it. I think you will travel far before you see Comfrey again. Perhaps you will even return to Tarvalon. If you do, if you see my daughter, tell her that what is said in anger is often repented. I will not remove her from the White Tower before time.
Gotta grab a fresh cold up. Hell yeah.
My own time there, I miss the quiet talks with Shirion in her study. Tell her that I said that to Tom Grimwell. Matt shrugged uncomfortably. Yes, my queen, but I do not mean to go to Tarvalon again. Once in any man's life is enough. My dad needs me to help work the farm. My sisters will be stuck with the milking with me gone. Gabriel laughed, a deep rumble of amusement. Are you anxious then to milk cows, boy? Perhaps you should see something of the world before it changes. Here. He produced a purse, brought it to the front of the palace, behind the tall gilded gates gleaming in the sun. It would be midday soon. Matt felt an urge to be gone, a need to hurry. It was hard keeping his pace to the young officers. Someone might wonder if he started running, and maybe, just maybe, things had really been the way they seemed back then. Maybe Gabriel really did not suspect that he knew. Maybe. He remembered those nearly black eyes seizing and holding like a pair of pitchfork tines through his head. Right, maybe. He forced himself to walk as if he had all the time in the world. Just a hay-brained country lad staring at the rugs and the gold. Just a mudfoot who'd never think anyone might put a knife in his back. Until Talonport led him through a sally port in one of the gates and followed him out. The fat officer with the rat's eyes was still there with the guards, and when he saw Matt, his face went red again. Before he could open his mouth, though, Talonport spoke. He has delivered a letter to the Queen from the daughter heir. Be glad, Elber, that neither Morgay nor Gabriel knows you tried to keep it from them. Lord Gabriel was most interested in the Lady Elaine's missive. Elber's face went from red to as white as his collar. He glared once at Matt and scuttled back along the line of guardsmen, his beady eyes peering through the bars of their face guards, as if to determine whether any of them had seen his fear. Thank you, Matt told Talonbar, and meant it. He had forgotten all about the fat man until he was staring him in the face again. Very well, Talonbar. He started across the oval plaza, trying not to walk too fast, and was surprised when Talonbar walked along. Why, is he Gabriel's man? Or more cases? He was just beginning to feel an itch between his shoulder blades, as if a knife might be about to go in. He doesn't know, Bernie. Gabriel doesn't suspect I know. When the young officer finally spoke. Did you spend long in Tavalin? In the White Tower? Long enough to learn anything of it? I was only there 3 days, Matt said cautiously. He would have made the time less. He could have delivered the letter without admitting ever being in Tavalin. He would have. But he did not think the man would believe he had gone all that way to see his sister and left the same day. I learned what I saw in that time. Nothing of any importance. They did not guide me around and tell me things. I was only there to see Els. You must have heard something, man. Who is Shiria? Does talking to her in her study mean anything? Matt shook his head vigorously to keep relief from showing on his face. I don't know who she is, he said truthfully. Perhaps he had heard Egwene, or perhaps Nynaeve mentioned the name. Aes Sedai, maybe. Why should it mean anything? I do not know, Talonbar said softly. There is too much I do not know. Sometimes I think she is trying to say something. He gave Matt a sharp look. Are you a loyal Underman, Tom Grinwell? Of course I am. Light. If I say that much more often, I may start believing it. What about you? Do you serve Morghese and Gabriel loyally? Talonbar gave him a look as hard as the dice's mercy. I serve Morghese, Tom Grinwell. Her, I serve to the death. Fare you well. He turned and strode back toward the palace with a hand gripping his sword hilt. Watching him go, Matt muttered to himself. I will wager this. He gave Gabriel's wash leather purse a toss. That Gabriel says the same. Whatever games they played in the palace, he wanted no place in any of them. And he meant to make sure Egwene and the others were out of them too. Fool women. Now I have to keep their bacon from burning instead of looking after my own. He did not start to run into the streets hidden from the palace. When he came dashing into the Queen's blessing, nothing very much had changed in the library. Tom and the innkeeper still sat over the stones board. A different game he saw from the positions of the stones, but no better for Gil. And the calico cat was back on the table washing herself. A tray holding their unlit pipes and the remains of a meal for two sat near the cat, and his belongings were gone from the armchair. Each man had a wine cup at his elbow. I will be leaving, Master Gil, he said. You can keep the coin and take a meal out of it. I'll stay long enough to eat.
Hell yeah.
Then I am on the road to Tyr. What is your hurry, boy? Tom seemed to be watching the cat more than the boy. We only just arrived here. You delivered the Lady Elaine's letter, then? The innkeeper said eagerly. Then kept your skin whole, it seems. Did you really climb over that wall like the other young man? No, that does not matter. Did the letter soothe Morghese? Do we still have to keep tiptoeing on eggs, man? I suppose it soothed her, I said. I think it did. He hesitated a moment, bouncing Gabriel's purse on his hand. It made a clinking sound. He had not looked to see if it really held 10 gold marks. The weight was about right. Master Gil, what can you tell me of Gabriel? Aside from the fact that he does not like Aes Sedai. You say he had not been in Camelin long? Why do you want to know about him? Tom asked. Basil, are you going to place a stone or not? The innkeeper sighed and stuck a black stone on the board, and the gleeman shook his head. Well, then, Gil said, there is not much to tell. He came out of the west during the winter. Somewhere out your way, I think. Maybe it was the Two Rivers. I've heard the mountains mentioned. We have no lords in the Two Rivers, Matt said. Maybe there are some up around Bearlock. I do not know. Well, that could be it, then. I had never even heard of him before, but I do not keep up with the country lords. Came while Morghese was still in Tavalin, he did. Half the city was afraid the tower was going to make her disappear, too. The other half did not want her back. The riots started up again, the way they did last year at the tail of winter. Pat shook his head. I do not care about politics, Master Jill. It's Gabriel I want to know about. Tom frowned at him and began cleaning the dottle from his long-stemmed pipe with straw. It is Gabriel I am telling you about, lad, Gil said. During the riots, he made himself leader of the faction supporting Morghese, but got himself wounded in the fighting, I hear. And by the time she returned, he had it all suppressed. Gareth Bryn didn't like Gabriel's methods. He could be a very hard man. But Morghese was so pleased to find order restored that she named him to the post Elida used to hold. The innkeeper stopped. Matt waited for him to go on, but he did not. Tom thumbed his pipe full of tobacco and walked over to light a spill, a small lamp kept for the purpose on the mantel above the fireplace. What else? He asked. A man has to have a reason for what he does. If he marries Morghese, will he be king when she dies? If Elaine were dead too, I mean. Tom choked, lighting his pipe, and Gil laughed. Andor is a queen, lad. Always a queen. If Morghese and Elaine both died, life sent it not so. Then Morghese's nearest female relative would take the throne. At least there's no question of who that is this time. A cousin of the Lady Dylan. Not like the succession after Tigraine died. It took 2 years before Morghese sat on the Lion throne then. Dylan could keep Gabriel as her advisor or marry him to cement the line. Though she would not likely do that unless Morghese has had a child by him. But he would be the prince consort even then. No more than that. Thank the light Morghese is a young woman yet. And Elaine is healthy. Light, however, did not say she is ill, did it? She is well. For now, at least. Isn't there anything else you can tell me about him? You do not seem to like him. Why? The innkeeper frowned in thought and scratched his chin and shook his head. I suppose I would not like him marrying Morghese, but I do not truly know why. He's said to be a fine man. The nobles all look to him. I do not like most of the men he's brought into the guards. Too much has changed since he came. I cannot lay it all at his door. There just seem to be too many people muttering in corners since he came. You would think we were all Kyrianan, the way they were before this civil war, all plotting and trying to find advantage. I keep having bad dreams since Gabriel came. And I'm not the only one. Fool thing to worry about in dreams. It is probably only worry about Elaine, what Morghese means to do concerning the White Power, and people acting like Kyrianan. I just do not know. Why are you asking all these questions about Lord Gabriel? Because he wants to kill Elaine, Matt said, and Egwene and Nynaeve with her. There was nothing useful in what Gil had told him that he could see. Ernie, I don't have to know why he wants them dead. I just have to stop it. Both men were staring at him again, as if he were mad again. Are you coming down sick again? Gil said suspiciously. I remember you staring crossways at everyone the last time. It's either that or else you think this is some sort of prank. You have the look of a prankster to me. If that is it, it's a nasty one. Mac grimaced. It's no bloody prank. I overheard him telling some man called Komar to cut Elaine's head off, and Egwene's and Nynaeve's while he was about it. A big man with a white stripe in his beard. That does sound like Lord Komar, Bill said slowly. He was a fine soldier, but it is said he
Do
left the
some
guard over some
load
matter
of dab, and
recent
we'll do
days. Not
a
that
dab.
anyone says it to his face. Komar was one of the best blades in the guards. You really mean it, don't you? I think he does, Basil, Tom said. I very much think he does. The light shine on us. What did Morghese say? You did tell her, didn't you? The light burn you did tell her. Of course I did, Matt said bitterly, with Gabriel standing right there and her gazing at him like a lovesick lapdog. I said, I may be a simple village man who just climbed over your wall half an hour past, but I already happen to know your trusted advisor there, the one you seem to be in love with, intends to murder your daughter. Light man, she'd have cut my head off. She might have at that. Tom stared into the elaborate carvings in the bowl of his pipe and tugged one mustache. Her temper was ever as sudden as lightning and twice as dangerous. You know it better than most, Tom, Bill said absently. Staring at nothing, he scrubbed both hands through his graying hair. There has to be something I can do. I haven't held a sword since the Aiel War, but well, that would be no good. Get myself killed and do nothing by it. But I must do something. Rumor. Tom rubbed the side of his nose. He seemed to be studying the stone cord and talking to himself. No one can keep rumors from reaching Morghase's ears. If she hears it strongly enough, she will start to wonder. Rumor is the voice of the people. The voice of the people often speaks truth. Morghase knows that. There is not a man alive I would back against her in the game. Love or no love, once Morghase sets examining Gabriel closely, he will not be able to hide as much of his childhood scars from her. If she learns he means to harm Elaine, he placed a stone on the board. It seemed an odd placement at first glance. Matt saw that in 3 more moves, a third of Gil's stones would be trapped. Lord Gabriel would have a most elaborate funeral. We would build game of houses, Gil muttered. Still, it might work. A sudden smile appeared on his face. We know who to tell to start it. All I need do is mention to Gilda that I dreamed it, and in 3 days she'll have told serving girls in half the new city that it is a fact. She is the greatest gossip the Creator ever made. Just be certain it cannot be traced back to you, Basil. No fear of that, Tom. Why, a week ago, a man told me one of my own bad dreams is a thing he'd heard from somebody who had it from someone else. Gilda must have eavesdropped on me telling it to Colleen. But when I asked, he gave me a string of names that led all the way to the other side of Camelin and vanished. Why, I actually went over there and found the last man, just out of curiosity to see how many mouths had passed him. He claimed it was his very own dream. But one thing puzzled me. Tom, you seem to be taking this all very calmly. I thought one of your life. The gleeman stared into the bowl of his pipe again. Matt, a very wise woman once told me that time would heal my wounds. That time smoothed everything over. I didn't believe her. Only she was right. You mean you do not love Morghase anymore? Boy, it has been 15 years since I left camp and a half step ahead of the headsman's axe. The ink of Morghase's signature is still wet on the warrant. Sitting here listening to Basil Nataron, Gil protested and Tom raised his voice. Nataron, I say, about Morghase and Gabriel and how they might marry. The passion faded a long time ago. Oh, I suppose I am still fond of her. Perhaps I even love her a little. But it is not a grand thing. And here I half thought you'd go running up to the palace to warn her. He laughed. I was surprised when Tom joined you. I'm not so big a fool as that, boy. Any fool knows men and women think differently at times. The biggest difference is this. Men forget, but never forgive. Women forgive, but never forget. Morghase might kiss my cheek and give me a cup of wine and say how she has missed me. Then she might just let the guards haul me off to prison and the headsman. No. Morghase is one of the most capable women I've ever known. That is saying something. I can almost pity Gabriel once she learns what he is up to. Here, you say. Is there any chance of you waiting until tomorrow to leave? I could use a night's sleep. I mean to be as far toward Tyr as I can before nightfall. Matt blinked. You mean to come with me? I thought you meant to stay here. Did you not just hear me say I had decided not to have my head cut off? Tyr sounds a safer place to me than Camelin. Suddenly that does not seem so bad. Besides, I like those girls. A knife appeared in his hand and was suddenly gone again. I'd not like anything to happen to them. But if you mean to reach here quickly, it's Arangil you want. A fast boat will have us there days sooner than horses, even if we rode them to death. And I don't say it just because my bottom has already taken on the shape of a saddle. Arangil then, as long as it's fast. Well, Gil said, I suppose if you are leaving, lad, I'd better see about getting you that meal. He pushed back his chair and started for the door. Hold this for me, Master Gill, Matt said, and tossed him the watch-leather purse. What's this, lad? Coin? Stakes. Gabriel doesn't know it, but he and I have a wager. The cat jumped down as Matt picked up the wooden dice cup and spun the dice out on the table. 5 sixes. And I always win.
Chapter 48. Following the craft. As the darter wallowed toward the docks of Tyr on the west bank of the river Aranin, Egwene did not see anything of the oncoming city. Slumped head down at the rail, she stared down at the waters of the river and past the ship's fat hull, and the boat went to sleep on her side as it passed vision and back again, cutting white color in the river. It made her feel that she knew raising her head would only make the sickness worse. Looking at the shore would only make the sickness worse from the motion of the darter. The vessel had moved in that twisting roll ever since Jureen. She did not care how it had sailed before then. She found herself wishing the darter had sunk before reaching Jureen. She wished they had made the captain put in at Arundel so they could find another ship. She wished they had never gone near a ship. She wished a great many things, most of them just to take her mind off where she was.
A sec before we
The
start
twisting was
on
less
water.
now under sweeps than it had been under sail, but it had gone on too many days now for the change to make much difference to her. Her stomach seemed to be sloshing about inside her like milk in a stone jug. She gulped and tried to forget that image. They had not done much in the way of planning on the darter, she and Elaine and Nynaeve. Nynaeve could seldom go 10 minutes without vomiting, and seeing that always made Egwene lose whatever food she had made. The warmth as they went further downriver did not help. Nynaeve was below now, no doubt with Elaine holding a basin for her again. Oh, Lord, no. Don't think about that. Green fields, meadows, light. Meadows do not heave like that. Hummingbirds. No, not hummingbirds. Larks. Larks singing. Mistress Jocelyn! Mistress Jocelyn! It took her a moment to recognize the name she had chosen to give Captain Kanan and the captain's voice. She raised her head slowly and fixed her eyes on his long face. We are docking, Mistress Jocelyn. You've kept saying how eager you were to be ashore. Well, we're there. His voice did not hide his eagerness to be rid of his 3 passengers, 2 of whom did little more than sick up, as he called it, and moan all night. Barefoot, shirtless sailors were tossing lines to men on the stone dock that thrust out into the river. The dockmen seemed to be wearing long leather vests in place of shirts. The sweeps had already been drawn in, except for a pair fending the ship off from coming against the dock too hard. The flat stones of the dock were wet. The air had a feel of rain not long gone, and that was a little soothing. The twisting motion had ceased some time since, she realized, but her stomach remembered. The sun was falling toward the west. She tried not to think of supper. Very good, Captain Kanan, she said with all the dignity she could summon. He'd not sound like that if I were wearing my ring, not even if I were sick on his boots. She shuddered at the picture in her mind. Her great serpent ring and the twisted ring of the Turangrial hung on a leather cord about her neck now. The stone ring felt cool against her skin, almost enough to counteract the damp warmth of the air. But aside from that, she had found that the more she used the Turangrial, the more she wanted to touch it, without pouch or cloth between it and her. Tel Iran still showed her little of immediate use. Sometimes there had been glimpses of Ran, or Mac, or Perrin, and more in her own dreams without the Turangrial, but nothing of which she could make any sense. The Shanchan, who she refused to think about. Nightmares of a white cloak putting Master Luhan in the middle of a huge toothed trap for bait. Why should Perrin have a falcon on his shoulder, and what was important about him choosing between that axe he wore now and a blacksmith's hammer? What did it mean that Matt was dicing with the Dark One, and why did he keep shouting, I'm coming? And why did she think in the dream that he was shouting at her? And ran. He'd been sneaking through utter darkness toward Calador. while all around him 6 men and 5 women walked, some hunting him and some ignoring him, some trying to guide him toward the shining crystal sword, and some trying to stop him from reaching it, appearing not to know where he was, or only to see him in flashes. One of the men had eyes of
That's
flame,
good.
and he wanted Ram killed with a desperation she could hear.
They wasn't too bad.
She
Can't
thought she
complain
knew
too much.
Baalzamon. But who were the others? Rand in that dry, dusty chamber again, with those small creatures settling into his skin. Rand confronting a horde of Shanchan. Rand confronting her, and the women with her. One of them was a Shanchan. It was all too confusing. She had to stop thinking about Rand and the others and put her mind to what was right ahead of her. What is the Black Arjo up to? Why don't I dream something about them? Light. Why can't I learn to make it do what I want? Have the horses put ashore, Captain, she told Kanan. I will tell Mistress Mariam and Mistress Carola. That was naive Mariam, and Elaine Carola. I have sent a man to tell them, Mistress Jocelyn, and your animals will be on the dock as soon as my men can rig a boom. He sounded very pleased to be rid of them. She thought about telling him not to hurry, but rejected it immediately. The darter's corkscrewing might have stopped, but she wanted dry land under her feet again, now. Still, she stopped to pat Mist's nose and let the gray mare nuzzle her palm, to let Kanan see she was in no great rush. Nynaeve and Elaine appeared at the ladder from the cabins, laden with their bundles and saddlebags, and Elaine almost as laden with Nynaeve. When Nynaeve saw Egwene watching, she pushed herself away from the daughter heir and walked unaided the rest of the way to where men were setting a narrow gangplank to the dock. 2 crewmen came to fasten a wide canvas sling under Mist's belly, and Egwene hurried below for her own things. When she came back up, her mare was already on the dock, and Elaine's roan dangled in the canvas sling halfway there. For a moment after her feet were on the dock, all she felt was relief. This would not pitch and roll. Then she began to look at this city whose reaching had caused them such pains. Stone warehouses backed the long docks themselves, and there seemed to be a great many ships, large and small, alongside the docks or anchored in the river. Hastily she avoided looking at the ships. Tyr had been built on flat land with barely a bump. Down muddy dirt streets between the warehouses, she could see houses and inns and taverns of wood and stone. Their roofs of slate or tile had oddly sharp corners, and some rose to a
Be
point.
right back.
Beyond these she could make out a high wall of dark gray stone, and behind it the tops of towers with balconies high around them, and white domed palaces. The domes had a squared shape to them, and the tower tops looked pointed, like some of the roofs outside the wall. All in all, Tyr was easily as big as Camelin or Tar Valon, and if not so beautiful as either, it was still one of the great cities. Yet she found it hard to look at anything but the stone of Tyr. She had heard of it in stories, heard that it was the greatest fortress in the world and the oldest, the first built after the breaking of the world, yet nothing had prepared her for this sight. At first she thought it was a huge gray stone hill, or a small barren mountain covering hundreds of hides, its length stretching from the Aranon west through the wall and into the city. Even after she saw the huge banner flapping from its greatest height, 3 white crescent moons slanting across a field half red, half gold, a banner waving at least 300 paces above the river, yet large enough to be clearly seen at that height. Even after she made out battlements and towers, it was difficult to believe the stone of Tyr had been built, rather than carved out of a mountain already there. Made with the power, Elaine murmured. She was staring at the stone, too. Flows of earth woven to draw stone from the ground, air to bring it from every corner of the world, and earth and fire to make it all in one piece, without seam or joint or mortar. Achuan Sadai says the tower could not do it today. Strange, given how the High Lords feel concerning the power now. I think, Nynaeve said softly, eyeing the dockmen moving around them, that given that very thing, we should not mention certain other things aloud. Elaine appeared torn between indignation, she had spoken very softly, and agreement. The daughter heir agreed with Nynaeve too often and too readily to suit Egwene. Only when Nynaeve is right, she admitted to herself grudgingly. A woman who wore the ring, or was even associated with Tar Valon, would be watched here. The barefoot, leather-vested dockmen were not paying the three of them any mind, as they hurried about, carrying bales or crates on their backs as often as on barrows. A strong odor of fish hung in the air. The next three docks had dozens of small fishing boats clustered around them, just like those in the drawing in the armourman's study. Shirtless men and barefoot women were hoisting baskets of fish out of the boats, mounds of silver and bronze and green, and colors she had never suspected fish might be, such as bright red and deep blue and brilliant yellow, some with stripes or splotches of white and other colors. She lowered her voice for Elaine's ear alone. She is right, Caroline. Remember why you are Caroline. She did not want Nynaeve to hear such admissions. Her face did not change when she heard, but Egwene could feel satisfaction radiating from her like heat from a cook stove. Nynaeve's black stallion was just being lowered to the dock. Sailors had already carried their tack off the ship and simply dumped it on the wet stones of the dock. Nynaeve glanced at the horses and opened her mouth. Egwene was sure it was to tell them to saddle their animals, then closed it again, tight-lipped, as if it had cost her an effort. She gave her braid one hard tug. Before the sling was well out of the way, Nynaeve tossed the blue-striped saddle blanket across the black's back and hoisted her high-cantled saddle atop it. She did not even look at the other two women. Egwene was not anxious to ride at that moment. The motion of a horse might be too close to the motion of the daughter for her stomach, but another look at those muddy streets convinced her. Her shoes were sturdy, but she would not enjoy having to clean mud off them, or having to hold her skirts up as she walked either. She saddled Mist quickly and climbed onto her back, settling her skirts before she could decide the mud might not be so bad after all. A little needlework on the darter. Elaine had done it all this time. The daughter heir sewed a very fine stitch, had divided all their dresses nicely for riding astride. Nynaeve's face paled for a moment when she swung into her saddle and the stallion decided to frisk. She kept a tight-mouthed grip on herself and a firm hand on her reins, and soon had him under control. By the time they had ridden slowly past the warehouses, she could speak. We need to locate Leandrin and the others without them learning we are asking after them. They surely know we are coming, that someone is at least, but I would like them not to know we are here until it is too late for them. She drew a deep breath. I confess I have not thought of any way to do this, yet. Do either of you have any suggestions? A thief-taker, Elaine said without hesitation. Nynaeve frowned at her. You mean like Huron? Egwene said. But Huron was in the service of his king. Wouldn't any thief-taker here serve the High Lords? Elaine nodded, and for a moment Egwene envied the daughter heir her stomach. Yes, they would. But thief-takers are not like the Queen's guards or the Tyrant defenders of the stone. They serve the ruler, but people who have been robbed sometimes pay them to retrieve what was stolen. And they also sometimes take money to find people. At least they do in Camelin. I cannot think it is different here in Tyr. Then we take rooms at an inn, Egwene said, and ask the innkeeper to find us a thief-taker. Not an inn, Nynaeve said as firmly as she guided the stallion. She never seemed to let the animal get out of her control. After a moment she moderated her tone a little. Leandrin at least knows us, and we have to assume the others do too. They will surely be watching the inns for whoever followed the trail they sprinkled behind them. I mean to spring their trap in their faces, but not with us inside. We'll not stay at an inn. Egwene refused to give her the satisfaction of asking. Where then? Elaine's brow furrowed. If I made myself known, and could make anyone believe it, in these clothes and with no escort, we would be welcomed by most of the noble houses, and very likely in the stone itself. There are good relations between Camelin and Tyr, but there would be no keeping it quiet. The entire city would know before nightfall. I cannot think of anywhere else except an inn, Nynaeve. Unless you mean to go out to a farm in the country, but we will never find them from the country. Nynaeve glanced at Egwene. I will know when I see it. Let me look. Elaine's frown swept from Nynaeve to Egwene and back again. Do not cut off your ears because you do not like your earrings, she muttered. Egwene put her attention firmly on the street they were riding along. I will be burned if I'll let her think I am even wondering. There were not a great many people out, not compared to the streets of Tar Valon. Perhaps the thick mud in the street discouraged them. Carts and wagons lurched past, most pulled by oxen with wide horns, the carter or wagoner walking alongside with a long goad of some pale ridged wood. No carriages or sedan chairs used these streets. The odor of fish hung in the air here, too, and no few of the men who hurried past carried huge baskets full of fish on their backs. The shops did not look prosperous. None displayed wares outside, and Egwene seldom saw anyone go in. The shops had signs, the tailor's needle and bolt of cloth, the cutler's knife and scissors, the weaver's loom, and the like, but the paint on most of them was peeling. The few inns had signs in as bad a state and looked no busier. The small houses, crowded between inns and shops, often had tiles or slates missing from their roofs. This part of Tyr, at least, was poor, and from what she saw in the faces, few of the people here cared to try any longer. They were moving, working, but most of them had given up. Few as much as glanced at three women riding where everyone else walked. The men wore baggy breeches, usually tied at the ankle. Only a handful wore coats, long, dark garments that fit arms and chest tightly, then became looser below the waist.
Start round one.
There were more men in low shoes than in boots, but most
Little
went
wax
barefoot
around
in
it.
mud. A good many wore no coat or shirt at all, and had their breeches held up by a broad sash, sometimes colored and often dirty. Some had wide conical straw hats on their heads, and a few cloth caps that sagged down one side of the face. The women's dresses had high necks right up to their chins, and hems that stopped at the ankle. Many had short aprons in pale colors, sometimes 2 or 3, each smaller than the one beneath it, and most wore the same straw hats as the men, but dyed to complement the aprons. It was on a woman that she first saw how those who wore shoes dealt with the mud. The woman had small wooden platforms tied to the soles of her shoes, lifting them 2 hands out of the mud. She walked along as if her feet were planted firmly on the ground. Egwene saw others wearing the platforms after that, men as well as women. Some of the women went barefoot, but not as many as the men. She was wondering which shop might sell those platforms when Nynaeve suddenly turned her back down an alleyway between a long, narrow 2-story house and a stone-walled potter's shop. Egwene exchanged glances with Elaine. The daughter heir shrugged, and then they followed. Egwene did not know where Nynaeve was going or why, and she meant to have words with her about it, but she did not mean to become separated either. The alley suddenly led into a small yard behind the house, fenced in by the buildings around it. Nynaeve had already dismounted and tied her reins to a fig tree where the stallion could not reach the green things sprouting in a vegetable patch that took up half the yard. A line of stones had been laid to make a path to the back door. Nynaeve strode to the door and knocked. "What is it?" Egwene demanded in spite of herself. "Why are we stopping here?" "Did you not see the herbs in the front windows?" Nynaeve knocked again. "Herbs?" Elaine said. "A wisdom," Egwene told her, as she got down from her saddle and tied Mist alongside the black. Gaideen is no good name for a horse. Does she think I don't know who she means it for? Nynaeve has found herself a wisdom, or seeker, or whatever they call her here. A woman opened the door just enough to look out suspiciously. At first, Egwene thought she was stout, but then the woman opened the door the rest of the way. She was certainly well padded, but the way she moved spoke of muscle underneath. She looked as strong as Mistress Luhan, and some in Emmons Field claimed Elspeth Luhan was almost as strong as her husband. It was not true, but it was not far wrong. "How can I help you?" the woman said in an accent like the Amerlin's. Her gray hair was arranged in thick curls that hung down the sides of her head, and her 3 aprons were in shades of green, each slightly darker than the one below, but even the top was pale. Which one of you needs me? I do, Nynaeve said. I need something for a queasy stomach, and perhaps one of my companions does too. That is, if we've come to the right place. You're not Tyra, the woman said. I should have known that by your clothes before you spoke. I'm called Mother Gwenna. I'm called a wise woman too, but I'm old enough not to trust that to caulk a seam. You come and I will give you something for your stomach. It was a neat kitchen, though not large, with copper pots hanging on the wall and dried herbs and sausages from the ceiling. Several tall cupboards of pale wood had doors carved with some sort of tall grass. The table had been scrubbed almost white, and the backs of the chairs were carved with flowers. A pot of fishy-smelling soup was simmering atop the stone stove, and a kettle with a spout just beginning to steam. There was no fire on the stone hearth, for which Egwene was more than grateful. The stove added enough to the heat, though Mother Gwenna seemed not to notice it at all. Dishes lined the mantel, and more were stacked neatly on shelves to either side. The floor looked as if it had just been swept. Mother Gwenna closed the door after them, and as she was crossing the kitchen to her cupboards, Nynaeve said, "Which tea will you give me? Chain leaf or bluewort?" "I would if I had any of either." Mother Gwenna rooted in the shelves a moment and came out with a stone jar. "Since I've had no time to glean of late, I will give you a brew of marsh white leaves." "I am not
Volume number
familiar
1.
with that," Nynaeve said slowly. "It works as well as chain leaf, but it has a bite to the taste some don't care for." The big woman sprinkled dried and broken leaves into a blue teapot and carried it over to the fireplace to add hot water. "You follow the craft, then?" said. She gestured to the table with a hand holding 2 blue-glazed cups she had taken from the mantel. "Sit, and we'll talk. Which one of you has the other stomach?" "I am fine," Egwene said casually as she took a chair. "Are you queasy, Carola?" The daughter heir shook her head with perhaps a touch of exasperation. "No matter." The gray-haired woman poured out a cup of dark liquid for Nynaeve, then sat across the table from her. "I made enough for 2, but marsh white tea keeps longer than salted fish. It works better the longer it sits, too. But it also grows more bitter. Makes a race between how much you need your stomach settled and what your tongue can stand. Drink." After a moment, she filled the second cup and took a sip. "You see, it will not hurt you." Nynaeve raised her own cup, making a small sound of displeasure at the first taste. When she lowered the cup again, though, her face was smooth. "It is just a little bitter, perhaps. Tell me, Mother Gwenna, will we have to put up with this rain and mud much longer?" The older woman frowned, parceling displeasure among the 3 of them before she settled on Nynaeve. "I am not a sea-folk windfinder," she said quietly. "If I could tell the weather, I'd sooner stick live silver pipe down my dress than admit it. The defenders take that sort of thing for next to Aes Sedai. Now, do you follow the craft or not? You look as if you have been traveling. What is good for fatigue?" she barked suddenly. "Flatwort tea," Nynaeve said calmly, "or andame root. Since you ask questions, what would you do to ease birthing?" Mother Gwenna snorted. "Apply warm towels, child, and perhaps give her a little white fennel if it was an especially hard birth. A woman needs no more than that and a soothing hand. Can't you think of a question any country farm wife could not answer? What do you give for pains in the heart, the killing kind?" "Powdered Kiandin blossom on the tongue," Nynaeve said crisply. "If a woman has biting pains in her belly and spits up blood, what do you do?" They settled down as if testing each other, tossing questions and answers back and forth faster and faster. Sometimes the questioning lagged a moment when one spoke of a plant the other knew only by another name, but they picked up speed again, arguing the merits of tinctures against teas, salves against poultices, and when one was better than another. Slowly, all the quick questions began shifting toward the herbs and roots one knew that the other did not, digging for knowledge. Egwene began to grow irritable listening. After you give him the bone knit, Mother Gwenna was saying, you wrap the broken limb in toweling soaked in water where you've boiled blue goat flowers. Only the blue, mind. Nynaeve nodded impatiently. And as hot as he can stand it. 1 part blue goat flowers to 10 of water, no weaker. Replace the towels as soon as they stop steaming and keep it up all day. The bone will knit twice as fast as with bone knit alone, twice as strong. I will remember that, Nynaeve said. You mentioned using sheep's tongue root for eye pain. I've never heard Egwene could stand it no longer. Mariam, she broke in, do you really believe you'll ever need to know these things again? You are not a wisdom any longer, or have you forgotten? I have not forgotten anything, Nynaeve said sharply. I remember a time when you were as eager to learn new things as I am. Mother Gwenna, Elaine said blandly, what do you do for 2 women who cannot stop arguing? The gray-haired woman pursed her lips and frowned at the table. Usually, men or women, I tell them to stay away from each other. That is the best thing and the easiest. Usually, Elaine said. What if there is a reason they cannot stay apart? Say they are sisters. I do have a way to make an arguer stop, the big woman said slowly. It is not something I urge anyone to try, but some do come to it. Egwene thought there was a suspicion of a smile at the corners of her mouth. I charge a silver mark each for women. 2 for men, because men make more fuss. There are some who'll buy anything if it costs a lot. But what is the cure? Elaine asked. I tell them they have to bring the other one here with them, the one they argue with. Both expect me to quiet the other's tongue. Despite herself, Egwene was listening. She noticed Nynaeve seemed to be paying sharp attention as well. When they have paid me, Mother Gwenna continued, flexing one hefty arm, I take them out back and stick their heads in my rain barrel till they agree to stop their arguing. Elaine burst out laughing. I think I may have done something very like that myself, Nynaeve said, in a voice that was much too light. Egwene hoped her own expression looked nothing like Nynaeve's. I'd not be surprised if you have. Mother Gwenna was grinning openly now. I tell them the next time I hear they've been arguing, I will do it for free, but I'll use the river. It is remarkable how often the cure works, for men especially. And it is remarkable what it has done for my reputation. For some reason, none of the people I cure this way ever tells anyone else the details, so someone asks for the cure every few months. If you've been fool enough to eat mudfish, you do not go around telling. I trust none of you have any wish to spend a silver mark. I think not, Egwene said, and glared at Elaine when she went off in peals of laughter again. Good, the gray-haired woman said. Those I cure of arguing have a tendency to avoid me like stingweed caught in their nets, unless they actually take sick, and I am enjoying your company. Most of those who come at present want something to take away bad dreams, and they grow sour when I have nothing to give them. For a moment she slipped into a frown, rubbing her temples. It is good to see 3 faces that do not look as if there is nothing left but to jump over the side and drown. If you are staying long in Tyr, you must come see me again. The girl called you Mariam? I am Islebreed. The next time we'll talk over some good seafolk tea instead of something that curdles your tongue. Right, but I hate the taste of marsh white. Mudfish would taste sweeter. In fact, if you have time to stay now, I'll brew a pot of Tremalking Black. Not long till supper either. It's just bread and soup with cheese, but you are welcome. That would be very nice, Islebreed, Nynaeve said. Actually, Islebreed, if you have a spare bedroom, I'd like to hire it for the 3 of us. The big woman looked at each of them without saying anything. Getting to her feet, she tucked the pot of marsh white tea away in the herb cupboard, then fetched a red teapot and a pouch from Mother. Only when she had brewed a pot of Tremalking Black put 4 clean cups and a bowl of honeycomb on the table along with pewter spoons, and reclaimed her chair did she speak. I've 3 empty bedrooms upstairs. Now my daughters are all married. My husband, the light shine on him, was lost in a storm in the fingers of the dragon near 20 years ago. There need be no talk of hiring if I decide to let you have the rooms. If. Stirring honey into her tea, she studied them again. What will make you decide? Nynaeve asked quietly. Iolwyn continued to stir as if she had forgotten to drink. 3 young women riding fine horses. I don't know much about horses, but those look as fine as what the lords and ladies ride to me. You, Marion, know enough of the craft that you ought to have hung herbs in your window already, or should be choosing where to do it. I've never heard of a woman practicing the craft too far from where she was born, but by your tongue you are a long way. She glanced at Elaine. Not many places with hair that color, and, or I'd say, by your speech. Fool men are always talking about finding a yellow-haired and/or girl. What I want to know is why. Running away from something, or running after something. Only you don't look like thieves to me, and I never heard of 3 women chasing after a man together. So tell me why, and if I like it, the rooms are yours. If you want to pay something, you buy a bit of meat now and then. Meat is dear since the trade up to Cairo fell away. But first, the why, Marion. We are chasing after something, Iolwyn, Nynaeve said. Or rather, after some people. Egwene schooled herself to stillness, and hoped she was doing as well as Elaine, who was sipping her tea as if she were listening to talk about dresses. Egwene did not believe Iolwyn Gwenna's dark eyes missed a great deal. They stole some things, Iolwyn, Nynaeve went on, from my mother, and they did murder. We are here to see justice done. Burn my soul, the large woman said. Have you no menfolk? Men are not good for much beyond heavy hauling and getting in the way most of the time, and kissing and such. But if there's a battle to be fought or a thief to catch, I say let them do it. Andor is as civilized as Tyr. You are not Aiel. There was no one else but us, Nynaeve said. Those who might have come in our place were killed. The 3 murdered Aes Sedai, Egwene thought. They could not have been Black Ajah, but if they had not been killed, the Amelin would not have been able to trust them. She's trying to keep to the bloody 3 oaths. She's skirting it close. Ah, Iolwyn said sadly. They killed your men, brothers, or husbands, or fathers. Spots of color bloomed in Nynaeve's cheeks, and the older woman mistook the emotion. Nah, don't tell me, girl. I'll not pull up old grief. Let it lie on the bottom until it melts away. There, you calm yourself. It was an effort for Egwene not to growl with disgust. I must tell you this, Nynaeve said in a stiff voice. The red still colored her face. These murderers and thieves are dark friends. They are women, but they are as dangerous as any swordsman, Iolwyn. If you wondered why we did not seek an inn, that is why. They may know we followed, and they may be watching for us. Iolwyn waved it all away with a sniff. Of the 4 most dangerous folk I know, 2 are women who never carry as much as a knife, and only one of the men is a swordsman. As for dark friends, Marion, when you are as old as I, you'll learn that false dragons are dangerous, lionfish are dangerous, sharks are dangerous, and sudden storms out of the south. But dark friends are fools. Filthy fools, but fools. The Dark One is locked up where the Creator put him, and no fetches or fangfish to scare children will get him out. Fools don't frighten me unless they're working the boat I'm riding. I suppose you don't have any proof you could take to the Defenders of the Stone. It would be just your word against theirs. What is a fetch, Egwene wondered?
Round 1 done.
Or fangfish, for that matter. We will have proof when we find them, Nynaeve said. They will have the things they stole, and we can describe them. They are old things, and of little value to anyone but us and our friends. You'd be surprised what old things can be worth, Islewin said dryly. Old Louise Moulin pulled up 3 hardstone bowls and a cup in his nets last year, down in the fingers of the dragon. Now, instead of a fishing snack, he owns a ship trading up the river. Old fool did not even know what he had till I did. Very likely there's more right where those came from, but Louise couldn't even remember the exact spot. I do not know how he ever managed to get a fish into his net. Half the fishing boats in Tyr were down there for months afterwards, dragging for quaindiar, not grunts or flatfish, and some had lords saying where to pull the nets. That's what old things can be worth, if they are old enough. Now, I've decided you do need a man for this, and I know just the one. Who? Nynaeve said quickly. If you need a lord, one of the high lords, remember we have no proof to offer till we find them. Islewin laughed until she wheezed. Girl, nobody from the Mala knows a high lord or any kind of lord. Mudfish don't school with silversides. I will bring you the dangerous man I know who isn't a swordsman, and the more dangerous of the two at that. Llewellyn Sandar is a thief catcher, the best of them. I do not know how it is in Andor, but here a thief catcher will work for you or me as soon as for a lord or a merchant, and charge less at that. Llewellyn can find these women for you if they can be found, and bring your things back without you having to go near these dark friends. Nynaeve agreed as if she were still not entirely sure,
Be
and
right back.
Islewin tied those platforms to her shoes, claws she called them, and hurried out. Egwene watched her go through one of the kitchen windows, past the horses and around the corner up the alley. You are learning how to be Aes Sedai, Mariam, she said as she turned from the window. You manipulate people as well as Moiraine. Nynaeve's face went white. Elaine stalked across the floor and slapped Egwene's face. Egwene was so shocked she could only stare. You go too far, the golden-haired woman said sharply. Too far. We must live together, or we will surely die together. Did you give Islewin your true name? Nynaeve told her what we could, that we seek dark friends, and that was risk enough, linking us with dark friends. She told her they were dangerous, murderers. Would you have had her say they were Black Archer? In Tyr? Would you risk everything on whether Islewin would keep that to herself? Egwene rubbed her cheek gingerly. Elaine had a strong arm. I do not like having to do it. I know, Elaine sighed. Neither do I, but we do have to. Egwene turned back to peering through the window at the horses. I know, but I do have to make it. Chapter 49. A Storm in Tyr. Egwene finally returned to the table and her tea. She thought perhaps Elaine was right, that she had gone too far, but she could not bring herself to apologize, and they sat in silence. When Islewin returned, she had a man with her, a lean fellow in his middle years who looked as if he had been carved from aged wood. Llewellyn Sandar took off his clogs by the door and hung his flat, conical straw hat on a peg. A sword breaker, much like Huron's, but with short slots to either side of the long one, hung from a belt over his brown coat, and he carried a staff exactly as tall as he was, but not much thicker than his thumb, and made of that pale wood, like ridged joints, that the ox drivers used for their goads. His short-cut black hair lay flat on his head, and his quick dark eyes seemed to note and record every detail of the room, and of everyone in it. Egwene would have bet he examined Nynaeve twice, and to her at least, Nynaeve's lack of reaction was blatant. It was obvious she knew it too. Islewin motioned him to a place at the table where he turned back the cuffs of his coat sleeves, bowed to each of them in turn, and sat with his staff propped against his shoulder, not speaking until the gray-haired woman had made a fresh pot of tea, and everyone had sipped from their cups. Mother Gwenna has told me of your problem, he said quietly as he set his cup down. I'll help you if I can, but the High Lords may have their own business to put me to soon. The big woman snorted. Llewellyn. When did you begin haggling like a shopkeeper trying to charge silk prices for linen? Do not claim you know when the High Lords will summon you before they do. I won't claim it, Sandar told her with a smile. But I know when I've seen men on the rooftops in the night, just out of the corner of my eye. They can hide like pipefish in reeds, but I've seen the movement. No one has reported a theft yet, but there are thieves working inside the walls, and you can buy your supper with that. Mark me. Before another week, I'll be summoned to the stone because a band of thieves is breaking into merchants' houses or even lords' manors. The defenders may guard the street, but when thieves need tracking, they send for a thief catcher, and me before any other. I'm not trying to drive up my price, but whatever I do for these pretty women, I must do soon. I believe he speaks the truth, Iowin said reluctantly. He'll tell you the moon is green and water white if he thinks it will bring him a kiss, but he lies less than most men about other things. He may be the most honest man ever born in the Mall. Elaine put a hand over her mouth, and Egwene struggled not to laugh. Nynaeve sat unmoved and obviously impatient. Sandar grimaced at the gray-haired woman, then apparently decided to ignore what she had said. He smiled at Nynaeve. I will admit that I'm curious about these thieves. I've known women thieves and bands of thieves, but I've never heard of a band of women thieves before, and I owe Mother Gwen a favor. His eyes seemed to record Nynaeve all over again. What do you charge? She asked sharply. To recover stolen goods, he said crisply. I ask the 10th part of the value of what I recover. For finding someone, I ask a silver mark for each person. Mother Gwenna says the things stolen have little value except to you, mistress. So I suggest you take that choice. He smiled again. He had very white teeth. I would not take money from you at all, except that the Brotherhood would frown on it. But I will take as little as I can. A copper or two. No. I know a thief-taker, Elaine told him, from Shinar. A very respectful man. He carries a sword as
It
well as a
wasn't too
sword.
bad. Definitely
How do you know?
made it burn a lot
Sandar
slower.
looked startled for a moment, and then upset with himself for being startled. He had not caught her hint, or else had decided to ignore it.
But I guess the
You are
good
not
thing about that
entirely. I have heard of Shinar, mistress.
is it
Tales
was
of
a
the
roach weed
tropics,
joint.
and every man a warrior. His smile said these were tales for children. True stories,
The
Egwene
other one I
said.
got's
True enough. I've been to
this could be a
Shinar.
regular joint when I light
He
it up.
looked at her and went on. I am not a lord, nor a wealthy merchant, nor even a soldier. The defenders do not trouble foreigners much for carrying swords, unless they need to stay long, of course. But I would be thrust into a cell under the stone. There are laws, mistress. His hand rubbed along his staff, as if unconsciously. I do as well as may be, without a sword. He focused his smile on Nynaeve once more. Now, if you will describe these things. He stopped as she set her purse on the edge of the table and counted out 13 silver marks. Egwene thought she had chosen the lightest coins. Most were Tyran, only one Andoran. The Amerlin had given them a great deal of gold, but even that would not last forever. Nynaeve looked into the purse thoughtfully before tightening the strings and putting it back into her pouch. There are 13 women for you to find, Master Sandar, with as much silver again when you do. Find them, and we will recover our property ourselves. I will do that myself for less than this, he protested. And there's no need for extra rewards. I charge what I charge. Have no fear I'll take a bribe. There is no fear of that, Iowin agreed. I said he is honest. Just do not believe him if he says he loves you. Sandar glared at her. I pay the coin, Master Sandar, Nynaeve said firmly. So I choose what I am buying. Will you find these women, and no more? She waited for him to nod reluctantly before going on. They may be together or not. The first is a Tarabona. She is a little taller than I, with dark eyes and pale honey-colored hair that she wears in many small braids after the Tarabon fashion. Some men might think her pretty, but she would not consider it a compliment. She has a mean, sulky mouth. The second is Kandori. She has long black hair with a white streak above her left ear, and she gave no names, and Sandar asked for none. Names were so easily changed. His smile was gone now that the business was at hand. 13 women she described as he listened intently, and when she was done, Egwene was sure he could have recited them back word for word. Mother Gwenna may have told you this, Nynaeve finished, but I will repeat it. These women are more dangerous than you can believe. Over a dozen have died at their hands already that I know, and I would not be surprised if that was a drop of the blood on their hands. Sandra and I both blinked at that. If they discover you are asking after them, you will die. If they take you, they will make you tell where we are, and Mother Gwenna will probably die with us. The gray-haired woman looked disbelieving. Believe it. Nynaeve stared a man in agreement. Believe it, or I'll take back the silver and find another with more brains. When I was young, Sandar said, voice serious, a cutpurse put her knife in my ribs because I thought a pretty young girl wouldn't be as quick to stab as a man. I do not make that mistake anymore. I will behave as if these women are all eyes and black eyed. Egwene almost choked, and he gave her a rueful grin as he scooped the coins into his own purse. You, mistress, there are no Aes Sedai in Tyr. It may take a few days unless they are together. 13 women together will be easy to find. Apart, they will be harder. But either way, I will find them, and I will not frighten them away before you learn where they are. When he had donned his straw hat and clogs and departed by the back door, Elaine said, I hope he is not overconfident. Albert, I heard what he said, but he does understand that they are dangerous, doesn't he? He has never been a fool except for a pair of eyes or a pretty ankle, the gray-haired woman said, and that is a failing of every man. He is the best thief-catcher in Tyr. He will find these dark friends of yours. It will rain again before morning, Nynaeve shivered, despite the warmth of the room. I feel a storm gathering. Elwyn only shook her head and set about filling bowls with fish soup for supper. After they ate and cleaned up, Nynaeve and Aylwyn sat at the table talking of herbs and cures. Elaine worked on a small patch of embroidery she had begun on the shoulder of her cloak, tiny blue and white flowers, then read in a copy of the Essays of Willem of Manachus that Aylwyn had on her small shelf of books. Egwene tried reading, but neither the essays nor the travels of Jane Farstrider nor the humorous tales of Alaria Elfin could hold her interest for more than a few pages. She fingered the stone terangrial through the bosom of her dress. Where are they? What do they want in the heart? None but the dragon, none but Rand can touch Kalendor. So what do they want? What? What? As night deepened, Aylwyn showed them each to a bedroom on the second floor, but after she had gone to her own, they gathered in Egwene's by the light of a single lamp. Egwene had already undressed in her shift. The cord hung round her neck with the 2 rings. The striped stone felt far heavier than the gold. This was what they had done every night since leaving Tar Valon, with the sole exception of that night with the Aiel. Wake me after an hour, she told them. Elaine frowned. So short this time? Do you feel uneasy? Nynaeve said. Perhaps you are using it too often. We would still be in Tar Valon scrubbing pots and hoping to find a black sister before a grey man found us if I had not, Egwene said sharply. Right. Elaine was right. I am snapping like a sulky child. She took a deep breath. Perhaps I am uneasy. Maybe it is because we are so close to the heart of the stone now. So close to Kalendor. So close to the trap, whatever it is. Be careful, Elaine said. And Nynaeve said more quietly, be very careful, please. She was tugging her braid in short jerks. As Egwene lay down on the low-posted bed with Ben on stools to either side, thunder rolled across the sky. Sleep came slowly. It was the rolling hills again, as always at first. Flowers and butterflies under spring sunshine, soft breezes and birds singing. She wore green silk this time, with golden birds embroidered over her breasts, and green velvet slippers. The Turangreal seemed light enough to drift up out of her dress, except for the weight of the great serpent ring holding it down. By simple trial and error, she had learned a little of the rules of Tel Iranriog. Even this world of dreams, this unseen world, had its rules, if odd ones. She was sure she did not know a tenth of them, and one way to make herself go where she wanted. Closing her eyes, she emptied her mind as she would have to embrace Saidar. It was not as easy because the rosebud kept trying to form and she kept sensing the true source, kept aching to embrace it. But she had to fill the emptiness with something else. She pictured the heart of the stone as she had seen it in these dreams, formed it in every detail, perfect within the void. The huge polished red stone columns, the age-worn stones of the floor, the dome far overhead, the crystal sword, untouchable, slowly revolving hilt down in midair. When it was so real, she was sure she could reach out and touch it. She opened her eyes, and she was there, in the heart of the stone. Or the heart of the stone as it existed in Tel Iranriog. The columns were there, and Kalendor, and around the sparkling sword, almost as dim and insubstantial as shadows, 13 women sat cross-legged, staring at Kalendor as it revolved. Honey-haired Leandrin turned her head, looking straight at Egwene with those big dark eyes, and her rosebud mouth smiled. Gasping, Egwene sat up in bed so fast she almost fell off the side. "What is the matter?" Elaine demanded. "What happened? You look frightened." "You only just closed your eyes," Nynaeve said softly. "This is the first time since the very beginning that you've come back without us waking you. Something did happen." She tugged her braid sharply. "Are you all right?" "How did I get back?" Egwene wondered. "I do not even know what I did." She knew she was only trying to put off what she had to say. Unfastening the cord around her neck, she held the great serpent ring and the larger twisted Turangreal on her palm. "They are waiting for us," she said finally. There was no need to say who. "And I think they know we are in Tyr." Outside, the storm broke over the city.
Rain drumming on the deck over his head, Matt stared at the stones board on the table between him and Tom. But he could not really concentrate on the game, even with an amber and silver mark writing on the outcome. Thunder crashed and lightning flashed in small windows. 4 lamps lit the captain's cabin of the Swift. Bloody shit might be as sleek as the bird, but it's still taking too bloody long. The vessel gave a small jolt, then another. The motion seemed to change. He had better not run us into the bloody mud. If he's not making the best time he can wring out of this butter tub, I will stuff that gold down his throat. Yawning, he had not slept well since leaving Camelot. He had not stopped worrying enough to sleep well. Yawning, he set a white stone on the intersection of 2 lines. In 3 moves, he would capture nearly a fifth of Tom's black stone.
1 second. I'll be right back here. Then we'll do it to Apple.
Around his pipe, placing his next stone. If you put your mind to it. His tobacco smelled like leaves and nuts. Matt reached for another stone from the pile at his elbow, then blinked and let it lie. In the same 3 moves, Tom's stones would surround over a third of his. He had not seen it coming, and he could see no escape. Do you ever lose a game? Have you ever lost a game? Tom removed his pipe and knuckled his mustaches. Not in a long while. Morgaze used to beat me about half the time. It is said good commanders of soldiers and good players of the great game are good at stones as well. She is the one, and I've no doubt she could command a battle too. Wouldn't you rather dice some more? Stones take too much time. I like a chance to win more than 1 toss in 9 or 10, the white-haired man said proudly. Matt bounded to his feet as the door banged open to admit Captain Dern. The square-faced man whipped his cloak from his shoulders, shaking the rain off and muttering curses to himself. The light's in my bones. I do not know why I ever let you hire Swift. You demanding more flaming speed in the blackest night or the heaviest rain. More speed. Always more bloody speed. Could have run a bloody mud flat 100 times over by now. You wanted the coal, Matt said harshly. You said this heap of old boards was fast, Derna. When do we reach Tyr? The captain smiled a tight smile. We are tying off to the dock now. And burn me for a bloody farmer if I carry anything that can flaming talk ever again. Now, where is the rest of my gold? Matt hurried to one of the small windows and peered out. In the harsh glare of lightning flashes, he could see a wet stone dock, if not much else. He fished the second purse of gold from his pocket and tossed it to Dern. Whoever heard of a riverman who didn't dice? About time, he growled. Might send them not too late. He had stuffed all of his spare clothes and his blankets into the leather script, and he hung that on one side of him and the roll of fireworks on the other from the cord he tied to it. His cloak covered it all, but gapped a little in the front. Better he got wet than the fireworks. He could dry out and be as good as new. A test with the bucket had shown fireworks could not. I guess Rand's doll was right. Matt had always thought the village council would not set them off in the rain because they made a better show on clear nights. Aren't you about ready to sell those things? Tom was settling his gleeman's cloak on his shoulders. It covered the leather-cased harp and flute. But his bundle of clothes and blankets he slung on his back outside the patch-covered cloak. Not until I figure out how they work, Tom. Besides, think what fun it will be when I set them all off. The gleeman shuddered. As long as you don't do it all at once, boy. As long as you don't throw them in the fireplace at supper. I'd not put it past you, the way you've been behaving with them. You're lucky the captain here did not throw us off the ship 2 days ago. He wouldn't. Not while that purse was in the offing, eh, Derna? Derna was tossing the purse of gold in his hand. I have not asked before this, but you've given me the gold now, and you'll not take it back. What is this all about, all this flaming speed? A wager, Derna. Yawning, Matt picked up his quarterstaff, ready to go. A wager. A wager! Derna stared at the heavy purse. The other, just like it, was locked in his money chest. There must be a flaming kingdom riding on it. More than that, Matt said. Rain bucketed down on the deck so hard that he could not see the gangplank except when lightning crackled above the city. The roar of the downpour barely let him hear himself think. He could see lights in windows up the street, though. There would be inns. The captain was on deck to see them ashore, and not in the rain either. Matt and Tom made their way to the stone dock alone. Matt cursed when his boots sank into the mud of the street, but there was nothing for it, so he kept striding along as fast as he could with the butt of his staff sticking at every step. The air smelled of fish, rank even with the rain. We'll find an inn, he said loudly so he could be heard, and then I will go out looking. In this weather? Tom shouted back. Rain was rolling down his face, but he was more interested in keeping his instruments covered than his face. Komar could have left Cameron before us. If he had a good horse instead of the crowbaits we were riding, he could have set out downriver from Erangel maybe a full day ahead of us. And I don't know how much of that we caught up with that idiot Derna. It was a quick passage, Tom allowed. Swift deserves its name. Be that as it may, Tom. Rain or no rain, I have to find him before he finds Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine. A few more hours won't make much difference, boy. There are hundreds of inns in a city the size of Tyr. There may be outside the walls. Some of them little places with no more than a dozen rooms to let. So tiny you could walk right by them and never know they were there. The Gleeman hitched the hood of his cloak up more, muttering to himself. It will take weeks to search them all. But it will take Komar the same weeks. We can spend the night in out of the rain. You can wager whatever coin you have left that Komar won't be out in it. Matt shook his head. A tiny inn with a dozen rooms. Before he left Emmons Field, the biggest building he had ever seen was the White Spring Inn. He doubted if Fran Alvear had any more than a dozen rooms to let. Egwene had lived with her parents and her sisters in the rooms at the front of the second floor. Sometimes I think we should never any of us have left Emmons Field. But Rand surely had to, and Egwene would probably have died if she had not gone to Tarvalin. Now she might die because she did go. He did not think he could settle for the farm again. The cows and the sheep certainly would not play ducks. But Perrin still had a chance to go home. Go home, Perrin, he found himself thinking. Go home while you still can. He gave himself a shake. Fool. Why would he want to? He thought of bed, but pushed it away. Not yet. Lightning streaked across the sky, 3 jagged bolts together, casting a stark light over a narrow house that seemed with bunches of herbs hanging in the windows, and a shop, shut up tight, but a potter's from the sign with its bowls and plates. Yawning, he hunched his shoulders against the driving rain and tried to pull his boots out of the clinging mud more quickly. I think I can forget about this part of the city, Tom, he shouted. All this mud and that stink of fish. Can you see Nynaeve or Egwene or Elaine choosing to stay here? Women like things neat and tidy, Tom, and smelling good. Maybe, boy, Tom muttered, then coughed. You would be surprised what women will put up with. But it may be. Holding his cloak to keep the roll of fireworks covered, Matt lengthened his stride. Come on, Tom. I want to find Kumar or the girls tonight, one or the other. Tom limped after him, coughing now and again. They strode through the wide gates in the city, unguarded in the rain, and Matt was relieved to feel paving stones under his feet again. And not more than 50 paces up the street was an inn, the windows of the common room spilling light onto the street, music drifting out into the night. Even Tom covered that last 50 paces through the rain quickly, limp or no limp. The White Crescent had a landlord whose girth made his long blue coat fit snugly below the waist as well as above, unlike those of most of the men who low-backed chairs at the tables. Matt thought the landlord's baggy breeches, tied at the ankle above low shoes, had to be big enough for 2 ordinary men to fit inside, one in each leg. The serving women wore dark, high-necked dresses and short white aprons. There was a fellow playing a hammered dulcimer between the 2 stone fireplaces. Tom eyed the fellow critically and shook his head. The rotund innkeeper, Kavan Lopar by name, was more than glad to give them rooms. He frowned at their muddy boots, but silver from Matt's pocket, the gold on the robe, and Tom's patch-covered cloak smoothed his fat forehead. When Tom said he would perform for a small fee some nights, Lopar's chins waggled with pleasure. Of a big man with a white streak in his beard, he knew nothing, nor of 3 women meeting the descriptions Matt gave. Matt left everything but his cloak and his quarterstaff in his room, barely looking to see that it had a bed. Sleep was enticing, but he refused to let himself think of it. Then wolfed down a spicy fish stew and rushed back out into the rain. He was surprised that Tom came with him. I thought you wanted to be in where it's dry, Tom. The gleeman patted the flute case he still had under his cloak. The rest of his things were up in his room. People talk to a gleeman, boy. I may learn something you would not. I'd not like to see those girls harmed any more than you. There was another inn 100 paces down the rain-filled street on the other side, and another 200 beyond that, and then more. Matt took them as he came to them, ducking in long enough for Tom to flourish his cloak and tell a story, then let somebody buy him a cup of wine afterwards, while Matt asked around after a tall man with a white streak in his close-cut black beard and 3 women. He won a few coins of dice, but he learned nothing, and neither did Tom. He was just glad the gleeman seemed to be taking only a few sips of wine at each inn. Tom had been close to abstemious on the boat, but Matt had not been certain he would not dive back into the wine once they reached the tier. By the time they had visited 24 common rooms, Matt felt as if his eyelids had weights. The rain had lessened a bit, but it still fell steadily in big drops. As the rain fell off, the wind had freshened. The sky had the dark gray look of coming dawn. Boy, Tom muttered, if we don't go back to the White Crescent, I'm going to go to sleep here in the rain. He stopped to cough. You realize you've marched right past 3 inns? I'm so tired I can't think. You have a scheme of where to go that you have not told me? Matt stared blearily up the street at a tall man in a cloak hurrying around a corner. I am tired. The band is 500 leagues from here, playing at being the Bloody Dragon. What? 3 inns? They were standing almost in front of another, the golden cup, according to the sign creaking in the wind. It looked nothing like a dice cup, but he decided to give it a try anyway. One more time. If we don't find them here, we'll go back and go to bed. Bed sounded better than a dice game with 100 gold marks right on the top.
Lighting round 2.
2 steps into the common room, Matt saw him. The big man wore a green
That has
coat
a
with blue
little
stripes
ring
on
around
his
it
sleeve.
too.
But it was Komar, close-cut black beard with a white streak over his chin and arm. He sat in one of the strangely low-backed chairs at a table on the far side of the room, rattling a leather dice cup and smiling at the men across from him. That fellow wore a long coat and baggy breeches, and he was not smiling. He stared at the coins on the table as if wishing he had them back in his purse. Another dice cup sat at Komar's elbow. Komar upended the leather cup in his hand and began laughing almost before the dice had stopped spinning. "Who is next?" he called loudly, pulling the wager to his side of the table. There was already a considerable pile of silver in front of him. He scooped the dice into the cup and rattled it. "Surely someone else wants to try his luck." It seemed that no one did, but he kept rattling the cup and laughing. The innkeeper was easy to pick out, though they did not seem to wear aprons in Tyr. His coat was the same shade of deep blue as that of every other innkeeper Matt had spoken to. A plump man, though little more than half the size of Lopar, and half that fellow's number of chins. He was sitting at a table by himself, polishing a pewter mug furiously and glaring across the room toward Komar, though not when Komar was looking. Some of the other men gave the bearded man sidelong frowns too, but not when he was looking. Matt suppressed his first urge, which was to rush over to Komar, drop him over the head with his quarterstaff, and demand to know where Egwene and the others were. Something was wrong here. Komar was the first man he had seen wearing a sword, and when they looked at him, it was more than fear of a swordsman. Even the serving woman, who had brought Komar a fresh cup of wine, and was pinched for her trouble, had a nervous laugh for him. Looked at it from every side. Half the trouble I didn't was not doing that. I have to think. Tiredness seemed to have stuffed his head with wool. He motioned to Tom, and they strolled over to the innkeeper, who eyed them suspiciously when they sat down. "Who is the man with the stripe in his beard?" Matt asked. "Not from the city, are you?" the innkeeper said. "He is a foreigner too. I've never seen him before tonight, but I know what he is. Some outlander who has come here and made his fortune in trade. A merchant rich enough to wear a sword. That is no reason for him to treat us like this." "If you have never seen him before," Matt said, "how do you know he is a merchant?" The innkeeper looked at him as if he were stupid. "His coat, man, and his sword. He cannot be a lord or a soldier if he's from off, so he has to be a rich merchant." He shook his head for the stupidity of foreigners. "They come to our places to look down their noses at us and fondle the girls under our very eyes. But he has no call to do this. If I go to the mall, I don't gamble for some fisherman's coins.
Lighting
If I go
number
to the
2.
bar, I do not dice with the farmers come to sell their crops." His polishing gained in ferocity. "Such luck the man has. It must be how he made his fortune. He wins, does he?" Yawning, I wondered how he would do dicing with another man who had luck. "Sometimes he loses," the innkeeper muttered, "when the stake is a few silver pennies. Sometimes. But let it reach a silver mark. No less than a dozen times tonight I've seen him win at crowns with 3 crowns and 2 roses. And half again as often at top. It has to be 3 sixes and 2 fives. He tosses nothing but 6s and 3s, and 3 6s and a 5 every throw at compass. If he has such luck, I say the light shine on him, and well to it. And let him use it with other merchants, as is proper. How can a man have such luck?" "Wagered dice," Tom said, then coughed. "When he wants to be sure of winning, he uses dice that always show the same face. He is smart enough not to have made it the highest toss. Folk become suspicious if you always throw the king." He raised an eyebrow at Matt. "Just one that's all but impossible to beat." but he cannot change that they always show the same face.
I have heard such, the innkeeper said slowly. Ilion has used them here.
Then he shook his head.
But both men use the same cup and dice. It cannot be.
Bring me 2 dice cups, Tom said, and 2 sets of dice. Crowns or spots, it makes no difference so long as they are the same. The innkeeper found it and left, prudently taking the pewter cup with him, and came back with 2 leather cups. Tom rolled the 5 bones cubes from one onto the table in front of Matt. Whether with spots or symbols, every set of dice Matt had ever seen had either been bone or wood. These had spots. He picked them up, frowning at Tom.
Am I supposed to see something?
Tom dumped the dice from the other cup into his hand then, almost too quickly to follow, dropped them back in, and twisted the cup over to rest upside down on the table before the dice could fall out. He kept his hand on top of the cup. Put a mark on each of them, boy. Something small, but something you'll know for your mark. Matt found himself exchanging puzzled glances with the innkeeper. Then they both looked at the cup upside down under Tom's hand. He knew Tom was up to something tricky. Demons were always doing things that were impossible, like eating fire and pulling silk out of the air. But he did not see how Tom could do anything with him watching close. He unsheathed his belt knife, made a small scratch on each die, right across the circle of 6 spots.
All right, he said, setting them back on the table. Show me your trick.
Tom reached over and picked up the dice, then set them down again and put away. Look for your marks, boy. That front. Tom's hand was still on the upended leather cup. Gleeman had not moved it or taken Matt's dice anywhere near it. He picked up the dice and blinked. There was not a scratch on them. The innkeeper gasped. Tom turned his free hand over, revealing 5 dice. Your marks are on these. That is what Komar is doing. It is a child's trick, simple, though I never have thought he had the fingers for it.
I do not think I want to play dice with you after all, Matt said slowly.
The innkeeper was staring at the dice, but not as if he saw any solution.
Call the watch, or whatever you call it here, Matt told him. Have him arrested. Don't kill nobody in the prison cell.
Yet what if they are already dead? He tried not to listen, but the thought persisted.
Then I'll see him dead, and Gabriel. Whatever it takes. But they aren't, Bernie. They can't be.
The innkeeper was shaking his head.
Me? Me? Denounce a merchant to the defenders? They would not even look at his dice. He could say one word and I would be in chains working the channel drenches in the fingers of the dragon. He could cut me down where I stood, and the defenders would say I had earned it. Perhaps he would go away after a while. Matt gave him a wry grimace.
If I expose him, will that be good enough? Will you call the watch or the defenders or whoever then?
You do not understand. You are a foreigner. Even if he is from off, he is a wealthy man, important.
Wait here, Matt told Tom.
I do not mean to let him reach Egwene and the others, whatever it takes.
He yawned as he scraped back his chair.
Wait, boy, Tom called after him,
Soft, yet urgent. The demon pushed himself up out of his chair.
Burn, you don't know what you're putting your foot into.
Matt waved for him to stay there and walked over to Komar. No one else had taken up the bearded man's challenge, and he eyed Matt with interest as Matt leaned his quarterstaff against the table and sat down. Komar studied Matt's coat and grinned nastily.
You want to wager coppers, farmer? I do not waste my time with...
He cut off as Matt set an Andorran gold crown on the table and yawned at him, making no effort to cover his mouth. You say little, farmer, then your manners could use improving. Gold has a voice of its own and no need of manners. He shook the leather cup in his hand and spilled the dice out. He was chuckling before they came to rest, showing 3 crowns and 2 roses.
You'll not beat that, farmer.
Perhaps you have more gold hidden in those rags that you want to lose.
What did you do, rob your master?
He reached for the dice, but Matt scooped them up ahead of him. Komar glared, but let him have the cup. If both tosses were the same, they would throw again until one man won. Matt
broad smile as he rattled the dice. He did not mean to give Komar a chance to change them. If they threw the same toss 3 or 4 times in a row, exactly the same every time, even these defenders would listen. The whole common room would see. They would have to back his word. He spilled the dice onto the tabletop. They bounced oddly. He felt something shifting. It was as if his luck had gone wild. The room seemed to be writhing around it, tugging at the dice with threads. For some reason, he wanted to look at the door, but he kept his eyes on the dice. They came to rest. 5 rounds. Komar's eyes were ready to pop out of his head. You lose, Matt said softly. If his luck was in to this extent, perhaps it was time to push it. The voice in the back of his head told him to think, but he was too tired to listen. I think your luck is used up, Komar. If you harmed those girls, it's all gone. I have not even found them. Komar began, still staring at the dice, then jerked his head. His face had gone white. How do you know my name? He had not found them yet. Sweet luck, stay with me. Go back to Kingland, Komar. Tell Gabriel you could not find them. Tell him they are dead. Tell him anything but leave Tyr tonight. If I see you again, I'll kill you. Who are you? The big man said unsteadily. Who? The next instant, his sword was out. He was on his feet. Matt shoved the table at him, overturning it, and grabbed for his quarterstaff. He had forgotten how big Komar was. The bearded man pushed the table right back at him. Matt fell over with his chair, holding a bare grasp on his staff, as Komar heaved the table out of the way and stabbed at him. Matt threw his feet against the man's middle to stop his rush, swung the staff awkwardly, just enough to deflect the sword. But the blow knocked the staff from his fingers. He found himself gripping Komar's wrist instead, with the man's blade a hand from his face. With a grunt, he rolled backwards, heaving as hard as he could with his legs. Komar's eyes widened as he sailed over Matt to crash onto a table, face up. Matt scrambled for his staff, but when he had it, Komar had not moved. The big man lay with his hips and legs sprawled across the top of the table, the rest of him hanging down with his head on the floor. The men who had been sitting at the table were on their feet, a safe distance away, wringing their hands and eyeing each other nervously. A low, worried buzz filled the common room, not the noise Matt expected. Komar's sword lay within easy reach of his hand, but he did not move. He stared at Matt, though, as Matt kicked the sword away and went to one knee beside him. I think his back is broken. I told you should have gone, Komar. Your luck is all used up.
I'll be right back.
You think I was the only one hunting them? They won't live till... His eyes stared at Matt, and his mouth was open, but he said no more. Nor ever would again. Matt met the glazing stare, trying to will more words out of the dead man. Who else? Burn you? Who? Where are they? Luck. Burn me, what happened to my luck? He became aware of the innkeeper pulling frantically at his arm. You must go, you must, before the defenders come. I will show them the dice, and will tell them it was an outlander, but a tall man, with red-colored hair and gray eyes. No one will suffer. The man I dreamed of last night. No one real. No one will contradict me. He took coin from everyone with his dice. But you must go. You must. Everyone else in the room was studiously looking another way. Matt let himself be hauled away from the dead man and pushed outside. Tom was already waiting in the rain. He seized Matt's arm and limped down the street hurriedly, pulling Matt stumbling behind him. Matt's hood hung down his back, and the rain soaked his hair and poured down his face, down his neck. But he did not notice. The gleeman kept looking over his shoulder, searching the street beyond Matt. Are you asleep, boy? You do not look asleep back there. Come on, boy. The defenders will arrest any outlander within 2 streets, no matter what description that innkeeper gives. It's the luck. I figured it out. The dice. My luck works best when things are random. Like dice. Not much good at cards, no good at stones, too much pattern. It has to be random. Even finding Komar. I'd stopped visiting every inn. I'd walked into that one by chance. Tom, if I'm going to find Egwene and the others in time, I have to look without any pattern.
What are you talking about? The man is dead. If he already killed them, well, you've avenged them. If he hasn't, you've saved them. Now will you bloody walk faster? The defenders won't be long coming, and they are not so gentle as the Queen's guards.
Matt shook his arm free and picked up his pace unsteadily, dragging the quarterstaff. He let it slip that he hadn't located them yet, but he said he was not the only one. Tom, I believe him. I was looking him in the eye, and he was telling the truth. I still have to find them, Tom. And now I don't even know who is after them. I have to find them. Stifling a huge yawn with his fist, Tom pulled Matt's hood up against the rain.
Not tonight, boy. I need sleep, and so do you.
Wet. My hair is dripping in my face. His head seemed fuzzy. With a need for sleep, he realized after a moment. And he realized how tired he was, if he had to think just to know it. All right, Tom. But I'm going to look again as soon as it's light. Tom nodded and coughed, and they made their way back to the White Crescent through the rain. Dawn was not long in coming, but Matt rasted himself out of bed, and he and Tom set off, trying to search every inn inside the walls of Tyr. Matt let himself wander wherever the mood and the next turning took him, not looking for inns at all, and tossing a coin to decide whether to go in. For 3 days and nights he did this. 3 days and nights it rained without stopping, sometimes thundering, sometimes quiet, but always pouring down. Tom's cough grew worse, so he had to stop playing the flute and telling stories. And he would not carry his harp out in that weather. He insisted on going along, however, and men still talked to Gleeman. Matt's luck with the dice seemed even better since he'd begun this random wander, though he never stayed in one inn tavern long enough to win more than a few coins. Neither of them heard anything useful. Rumors of war with Ilion, rumors of invading Meander, rumors of invasion from Andor, of the sea folk shutting off trade, Martyr Hawkwing's armies returning from the dead. Rumors of the dragon coming. The men Matt gambled with were as gloomy about one rumor as the next. They seemed to him to hunt for the darkest rumors they could find and half believe them all. But he heard not a whisper that might lead him to Egwene and the others. Not one innkeeper had seen women matching their descriptions. He began to have bad dreams, no doubt from all his worrying. Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine, and some fellow with close-cropped white hair, wearing a coat with puffy striped sleeves like Komar's, laughing and weaving a net around him. Only sometimes it was Moraine he was weaving the net for, and sometimes he held a crystal sword instead, a sword that blazed like the sun as soon as he touched it. Sometimes it was Rand who held the sword. For some reason, he dreamed of Rand a good deal. Matt was sure it was all because he was not getting enough sleep, not reading except when he happened to remember. But he would not stop. He had a wager to win, he told himself. He meant to win this one, if it killed him. Chapter 50. The Hammer. The afternoon sun was hot as the ferry docked in Tyr. Puddles stood on the steaming stones of the dock, and the air seemed almost as damp and barren as Ilion's had. The air smelled of pitch and wood and rope. You could see shipyards further south along the river, of spices and iron and barley, of perfumes and wines and 100 different aromas he could not single out from the melange, most coming from the warehouses behind the docks. When the wind swirled momentarily out of the north, he caught the scents of the fish, but those faded as the wind swung away. No smells of anything to hunt. His mind reached out to feel for wolves before he realized what he was doing and snapped his guards shut. He had done that too often of late. There had been no wolves, of course. Not in a city like this. He wished it did not feel so alone. As soon as the ramp at the end of the barge was lowered, he let Stepper up to the dock after Moraine and Land. The huge shape of the stone of Tyr lay off to their left, shadowed so that it looked like a mountain despite the great banner at its highest point. He did not want to look at the stone, but it seemed impossible to look at the city without seeing it. Was he here? Why, if he has already tried to get into that, he could be dead already. And then it would be all for nothing. What are we meant to find here? Serene asked behind him. She had not stopped asking questions. She just did not ask them with the Aes Sedai on the water. Ilion showed us gray men and the wild hunt. What does Tyr hold that?
that someone wants to keep you from so badly? Perrin glanced around. None of the dockmen shuttling cargo about seemed to have heard. He was sure he would have smelled fear if they had. He bit back the sharp remark that hung on the end of his tongue. She had a quicker tongue and a sharper.
I wish you did not sound so eager, Well, Rumble. You seem to think it will all be as easy as Enoch finding you.
Easy, Serene muttered. Easy. Loyal, you were nearly killed twice in one night. Billion was enough for a hunter's song in itself. What makes you call it easy? Aaron grimaced. He wished Loyal had not decided to call Serene by that name she had chosen. It was a constant reminder that Moraine thought she was Min's Falcon. And it did nothing to stop Aaron wondering if she was the beautiful woman Min had warned him against, too. At least I'd not run up against the Hawk, or Tuathalan with a sword. Now that would be the strangest of all, for I am a wool merchant. Stop asking questions, Serene, he said as he swung up into Stepper's saddle. You will find out why we are here when Moraine decides to tell you. He tried to look at the stone. She turned those dark, tilted eyes on him. I do not think you know why, blacksmith. I think that is why you will not tell me, because you cannot. Admit it, farm boy. With a small sigh, he rode off the docks.
Take you too now.
Serene did not dig at Loyal in that cutting way when the Ogier refused to answer her questions. He thought she must be trying to browbeat him into using that name. He would not. Moraine had tied the oiled cloak behind her saddle atop the innocuous-looking bundle that held the dragon banner, and despite the heat, had donned the blue linen cloak from Ilion. Its deep, wide hood hid her face. Her great serpent ring was on a cord around her neck. Tyr, she had said, did not forbid the presence of eyes, only channeling. But the defenders of the stone kept a close eye on any woman who wore the ring. She did not want to be watched on this visit to Tyr. Lan had stuffed his color-shifting cloak into his saddlebags 2 days earlier. When it had become apparent that whoever had sent the Dark Hounds, Samael, thought he was shiver and tried not to think of the name at all, whoever had sent them had not sent any more pursuit. The warder had made no concessions to the heat of Ilion, and he made none to the lesser heat of Tyr. His great green coat was buttoned up all the way. Theron wore his coat half undone and the neck of his shirt untied. Tyr might be a little cooler than Ilion, but it was still as hot as summer in the Two Rivers. And as always after rain, the dampness of the air made the heat seem worse. His axe belt hung looped around the tall pommel of his saddle, and it was handy there if he needed it. He felt better not wearing it. He was surprised at the mud in the first streets they rode along. Only villages and smaller towns had dirt streets that he had seen, and Tyr was one of the great cities. But the people did not seem to mind men going barefoot. A woman walking on little wooden platforms caught his attention for a time, and he wondered why they did not all wear them. Those baggy breeches on the men looked as if they might be cooler than the snug ones he wore, but he was sure he would feel a fool if he tried them. He made a picture in his head of himself wearing those breeches, one of those round straw hats, and chuckled at it.
What do you find funny?
Loyal asked. His ears were drooping till their tufts were hidden in his hair, and he looked at the people in the street worriedly.
These folk look defeated. They did not look this way when I was here last. Even people who let their grove be cut down do not deserve to look like this.
As Perrin began to study faces instead of just looking at everything at once, he saw that Loyal was right. Something had gone out of too many of those faces. Hope, maybe. Curiosity. They barely glanced at the party riding by, except to get out of the way of the horses. The Ogier, mounted on an animal as big as a draft horse, might as well have been Lan or Perrin. The streets changed, gaining wide stone paving after they passed inside the gates of the high gray city wall, past the hard, dark eyes of soldiers in breastplates, over red coats with wide sleeves ending in narrow white cuffs, and rimmed, round helmets with a ridge over the top. Instead of the baggy breeches other men wore, theirs were tied and tucked into knee-high boots. The soldiers frowned down the sword and fingered their own, stared sharply at Perrin's axe, but in a way, despite their frowns and sharp looks, there was something beaten in their faces, as if nothing were really worth the effort any longer. The buildings were larger and taller inside the walls, though most were made no differently from those outside. The roofs looked a bit odd to Baron, especially those that came to points. But he had seen so many different kinds of roofs since leaving home that he only wondered what kind of nails they used with their tiles. In some places, the people did not use nails on the roof tiles at all. Palaces and great buildings stood among the smaller and more ordinary, seemingly placed haphazardly. A structure of towers and squarish white domes, surrounded on all sides by wide streets, might have shops and inns and houses on the other sides of those streets. A huge hall fronted by squared columns of marble 4 paces on a side, with 50 steps to climb to reach bronze doors 5 feet high, had a bakery one side and a tailor on the other. More men wore coats and breeches like the soldiers here, though in brighter colors and without armor, and some even wore swords. None of them went barefoot, not even those in baggy breeches. The women's dresses were often longer, their necklines, their shoulders, and even bosom. The cloth was likely to be silk. The sea folk traded a good deal of silk through Tyr. As many sedan chairs and carriages drawn by teams of horses moved through the streets as ox carts and wagons. Yet too many of the faces had that same look of having given up. The inland shows, the Star, had a weaver's shop on one side and a smithy on the other, with narrow alleyways between. The smithy was of undressed gray stone, the weaver's and the inn of wood, though the Star stood 4 stories tall and had small windows in its roof as well. The rattle of looms was hard-pressed to compete with the clang of the smith's hammer. They handed their horses over to stablemen to be taken around back and went inside the inn. There were fish smells from the kitchen, baking, and perhaps stewing, and the scent of the men in the supper room all wore the tight coats and loose breeches. Aaron did not think richer men. Somehow he was sure the men in colorful coats with puffy sleeves and the bare-shouldered women in bright silk were all rich, nobles. Those folk would not put up with the noise. Perhaps that was why Lan had chosen it. How are we supposed to sleep with this racketing? Serene muttered. No questions, he said with a smile. For a moment, he thought she was going to stick out her tongue at him. The innkeeper was a round-faced, balding man in a long, deep blue coat and those loose breeches, who bowed over hands clasped across his stout belly. His face had that look, a weary resignation. The light shine on you, mistresses, and welcome, he sighed. The light shine on you, masters, and welcome. He gave a small start at Perrin's yellow eyes that passed wearily on to Loyal. The light shine on you, friend Ogier, and welcome. It is a year or more since I have seen one of your kind in Tyr. Some work or other at the stone. They stayed in the stone, of course, but I saw them in the street one day. He finished with another sigh, seemingly unable to summon any curiosity as to why another Ogier had come to Tyr, or why any of them had come for that matter. The balding man, whose name was Jurahart, showed them to their rooms himself. Apparently, Moraine's silk dress and the way she kept her face in, taken with Lan's hard face and sword, made them a lady and her guard in his eyes, and so worthy of his personal attention. Perrin he obviously took as some kind of retainer, and Zareen he was plainly unsure of, to her visible disgust. And Loyal was, after all, an Ogier. He called men to push beds together for Loyal, and offered Moraine private over meals if she wished. She accepted graciously. They kept together through it all, making a small procession through the upper halls until Harad bowed and sighed his way out of their presence, leaving them all where they had begun, outside Moraine's room. The walls were white plaster, and Loyal's head brushed the hall ceiling. "Odious fellow," Serene muttered, brushing furiously at the dust on her narrow skirts with both hands. "I believe you took me for your friend. I will not stand for that." "Watch your tongue," Lan said softly. "If you use that name or folk in here, you will regret it, girl." She looked as if she were going to argue, but his icy blue eyes stilled her tongue this time. They did not cool her glare. Moraine ignored them, staring off at nothing. She worked her cloak in her hands almost as if wiping them, unaware what she was doing, in Perrin's opinion. "How do we go about finding Rand?" he asked, but she she did not appear to hear. Moray, remain close to the end, she said after a moment. Tyr can be a dangerous city for those who do not know its ways. The pattern can be torn here. That last was soft, as if to herself. In a stronger voice, she said, Lad, let us see what we can discover without attracting attention. The rest of you, stay close to the end. Stay close to the end. So he mimicked as the Aes Sedai and the warder disappeared down the stairs. But she said it quietly enough that they would not hear. It's Rand. He's the one you called the... If she looked like a falcon right then, it was a very uneasy falcon. And we are in Tyr, where the heart of the stone holds it. And the prophecies say, the light burned me. So is this a story I want to be in? It is not a story, so for a moment, Perrin felt almost as hopeless as the innkeeper had sounded. The wheel weaves us into the pattern. You chose to tangle your thread with ours. It's too late to untangle it now. What? She growled. Now you sound like her. He left her there with Loyal and went to put his things in his room. It had a low bed, comfortable and small, a sitting meals, everything fitted a servant. A washstand, a stool, and a few pegs from the cracked plaster wall. And when he came out, they were both gone. The ring of hammer on handle called to him. So much in Tyr looked odd that it was a relief to walk into the smithy. The ground floor was all one large room with no back wall except for two long doors that stood open on a yard for shoeing horses and oxen, complete with an ox sling. Hammers stood in their stands, tongs of various kinds and sizes hung on the exposed joists of walls, buttresses and hoof knives and other farrier's tools lay neatly arranged on wooden benches, with chisels and beak irons and swages, and all the implements of the blacksmith's craft. Bins held lengths of iron and steel in various thicknesses. 5 grinding wheels of different roughness stood about the hard-dirt floor, 6 anvils, and 3 stone-sided forges with their bellows, though only one held glowing coals. Quenching barrels stood ready to hand. The smith was plying his hammer on yellow-hot iron, rinsed in heavy tongs. He wore baggy breeches and had pale blue eyes, but the long leather vest over his bare chest and apron were not much different from those Perrin and Master Luhan had worn back in Emond's Field, and his thick arms and shoulders spoke of years working metal. His dark hair had almost the same amount of gray that Perrin remembered in Master Luhan's. More vests and aprons hung on the wall as if the man had apprentices, but they were not in evidence now. The forge fire smelled like home. The hot iron smelled like home. The smith turned to thrust the piece he was working back into the coals. Perrin stepped over to work the bellows for him. The man glanced at him but said nothing. Perrin pulled the bellows handle up and down with slow, steady, even strokes, keeping the coals at the right heat. The smith went back to working the hot iron on the rounded horn of the anvil this time. Perrin thought he might be making a barrel spring. The hammer rang with sharp, quick blows. The man spoke without looking up from his work. Apprentice, was all he said. Yes, Perrin replied just as simply. The smith worked on for a time. It was a barrel scrape, for cleaning the insides of wooden barrels. Now and again he eyed Perrin consideringly. Setting his hammer down just for a moment, the smith picked up a short length of thick, square stock and pushed it into Perrin's hand, then picked up his hammer again and resumed work. See what you can do with that, he said. Without even thinking about it, Perrin stepped over to an anvil on the other side of the forge and tapped the stock against its edge. It made a nice ring. The steel had not been left long enough in the slow furnace to pick up a great deal of carbon from the coal. He pushed it into the hot coals for almost its entire length, tasted the 2 water barrels to see which had been salted. The third was olive oil. Then took off his coat and shirt and chose a leather vest that would fit his chest. Most of these tyrant fellows were not as large as he, but he found one that would do. Finding an apron was easier. When he turned around, he saw the smith, still with his head down over his work, nodding and smiling to himself. But just because he knew his way around a smithy did not mean he had any skill at smithing. That was yet to be shown. When he came back to the anvil with 2 hammers, a set of long-handled flat tongs, and a sharp-topped hardy, The steel bar had heated to a dark red, except for a small bit which he had left out of the coals. He worked the bellows, watching the color of the metal lighten until it reached a yellow just short of white. Then he pulled it out with the tongs, laid it on the anvil, and picked up the heavier of the two hammers. About 10 pounds, he estimated, and with a longer handle than most people, who did not know metalworking, thought was necessary. He held it near the end. Hot metal gave off sparks. Sometimes he had seen the scars in the hands of the smith from up at Round Hill, a careless fellow. He did not want to make anything elaborate or fancy. Simple things seemed best at the moment. He began by rounding the edges of the bar, then hammered the middle out into a broad blade, almost as thick as the original at the butt, but a good hand and a half long. From time to time, he returned the metal to the coals to keep it at the pale yellow. After a time, he shifted to the lighter hammer, half the weight of the first. The piece beyond the blade he thinned down, then bent it over the anvil horn in a curve down beside the blade. A wooden handle could be fitted onto that eventually. Setting the sharp chisel hardy into the anvil's hardy hole, he laid the glowing metal atop it. One sharp blow of the hammer cut off the tool he had made, or almost made. It would be a chamfer knife for smoothing and leveling the tops of barrel staves after they were hopped together, among other things. When he was done, the other man's barrel scrape made him think of it. As soon as he had made the hot cut, he tossed the glowing metal into the salted quenching barrel. Unsalted gave a harder quench, for the hardest metal, while the oil gave the softest, good knives. And swords, he had heard, but he had never had any part in making anything like that. When the metal had cooled enough to a dull gray, he removed it from the water and took it to the grinding wheels. A little slow work with foot pedals ground the polish onto the blade. Carefully, he heated the blade portion again. This time, the colors deepened to straw to bronze. When the bronze color began to run up the blade in waves, he set it aside to cool. The final edge could be sharpened then. Quenching again would destroy the tempering he had just done. Very neat bit of work, Smith said. No wasted motion. You're looking for me? My apprentices just walked away, all three of them, the worthless fools. And I've plenty you could do. Barrett shook his head. I do not know how long I will be in Tyr. I'd like to work a little longer if you do not mind. It has been a long time and I miss it. Maybe I could do some of the work your apprentices would have done. The smith snorted loudly. You're a deal better than any of those louts, looking around and staring, muttering about their nightmares, as if everyone doesn't have nightmares sometimes. Yes, you can work here as long as you want. Well, I have orders for a dozen draw knives and 3 cooper's adzes. And a carpenter down the street needs a mortise hammer, and too much to list it. Start with the draw knives. We will see how far we get.
I'll be right back.
Perrin lost himself in the work, for a time forgetting everything but the heat of the metal, the ring of his hammer, and the smell of the forge. But there came a time when he looked up and found the smith, Dermot Ajala, he had said his name was, taking off his vest and the shoeing yard dark. All the light came from the forge and a pair of lamps, and Zareen was sitting on an anvil by one of the cold forges watching him. So you really are a blacksmith, she said. He is that, mistress, Jala said. Apprentice, he says, but the work he did today amounts to his master's piece as far as I am concerned. Fine stroking, and better than steady. Baron shifted his feet with compliments and Smith grinned at him. Zareen stared at both of them with a lack of comprehension. Baron went to replace the vest and apron on their peg, but once he had them off, he was suddenly conscious of Zareen's eyes on his back. It was as if she were touching him. For a moment, the herbal scent of her seemed overwhelming. He quickly pulled his shirt over his head and stuffed it raggedly into his breeches and jerked on his coat. When he turned around, Zareen wore one of those small, secretive smiles that had always made him nervous. Is this what you mean to do, then? She asked. Did you come all this way to be a blacksmith again? The Jala paused in the act of pulling the yard doors closed and listened. Baron picked up the heavy hammer he had used, a 10-pound head, the handle as long as his forearm. It felt good in his hands. It felt right. The smith had glanced at his eyes once and never even blinked. It was the work that was important. The skill with metal. not the color of a man's eyes. No, he said sadly. One day, I hope, but not yet. He started to hang the hammer back on the wall. Take it, Jolly grinned throat. I do not usually give away good hammers, but the work you have done today is worth more than the price of that hammer by far. And maybe it will help you to that one day. Man, if I've ever seen anyone made to hold a smith's hammer, it is you. So take it, keep it. Baron closed his hand around the haft. It did feel right. Thank you, he said. I cannot say what this means to me. Just remember the one day, man. Just you remember it. As they left, Zareen looked up at him and said, You have any idea how strange men are, blacksmith? No, I do not think you did. She darted ahead, leaving him holding a hammer in one hand and scratching his head with the other. No one in the common room looked at him.
All right, everyone. We're going to call into this tonight for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.